After the latest news about Path of Exile 1, the community had a complete meltdown. But is this just gamers being overly dramatic, or is it truly the end of POE1? I'm going to give you a detailed analysis of what's happening, why it happened, and what to expect in the future. Spoiler alert, it's really bad. Let's start at the beginning. Path of Exile is a live service game, perhaps the only one that actually does live service right. Every 3-4 months, the game gets a content patch or league, bringing players back to try out the new content. These peak periods fuel the in-game economy, make grouping up easy, and keep the community engaged. When Path of Exile 2 was introduced as a separate game, many players were concerned that its existence might hurt the POE1 community. However, the developers came up with a genius plan to handle both games. The idea was to run the two games in parallel with synchronized leagues. If Path of Exile 1 got a content patch, POE2 would get 1 month later. This way, hardcore players could participate in both without issue, and if one league wasn't to their liking, they could switch to the other. More importantly, this setup ensured that the two games wouldn't siphon players from each other during crucial league launches. The community was excited about this plan and eager to see it in action. And that's where the problem started. POE2's launch was delayed, which also pushed back the release of the next POE1 league. Since GGG prioritized POE2 above everything else, they moved the entire Path of Exile 1 development team to work on POE2. This was a huge mistake, one that might even kill POE1. Here's why. Software engineering is hard, especially when working on a brand new project. POE2 has a new engine, new features, new mechanics, and new controls. This means that a lot can go wrong at launch, and a lot did. So, allocating all company resources to push POE2 out as fast as possible might have seemed like a good idea, but in reality, it was the worst possible move. There's an old saying in software management: the management gave us 9 pregnant women and expects a baby in 1 month. In other words, adding more people to a team doesn't instantly increase productivity. New members need time and support to learn the new engine, which means senior developers have to spend their time training them instead of working on the game. Over time, these new members do become productive, but here's the catch. GGG planned to remove the POE1 developers right when they finally became useful. And it gets worse. POE1's last league was released in July, and shortly after, its developers were reassigned to POE2. This means they've now spent over 7 months working on POE2. If a POE1 developer was tasked with debugging a specific component of POE2, they are now likely the biggest expert on that system. Losing them would set POE2's development back by weeks or even months. And that brings us to the present. GGG just announced that the POE1 development team cannot return to POE1 until POE2's next patch, version 0.2, is released. This means they admit that the POE1 developers have become irreplaceable for POE2's development. The most likely scenario? POE2's 0.2 patch launches in about 3 months. Only then can development on the next POE1 league begin, meaning we won't see any new POE1 content for at least 6 months. But there's a high chance it will take even longer. I don't doubt that GGG intends to return to POE1 development, but the reality is that they may never be able to. The POE1 dev team is now too valuable to POE2. If they are essential for 0.2, why would that suddenly change for 0.3? And it gets even worse. By then, the POE1 dev team will have spent an entire year working on POE2. No matter how skilled they are, people forget things they don't use. The team will struggle to return to POE1's outdated engine and old development pipeline, especially since POE2's systems were designed to streamline everything. Going back will be slow and painful. The most likely outcome? The POE1 dev team will struggle to produce a half-baked league when they could instead be delivering high-quality POE2 content quickly. Will GGG still push for a POE1 league in that scenario? And even if they do, will the POE1 community even survive a year with no content? I do not doubt that GGG doesn't want to abandon Path of Exile 1. But the truth is, right now it's looking more likely than not.
Just wait. Surely we can...
Ranger, you have been sentenced to death.